Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3 with Black Ice 9. And of course, we're playing as Italy. We have a recent starting of a war with Yugoslavia. I think Germany triggered it, and I think Greece then came in on a mutual defense pact. I think, and then joined the Allies or something. And we are battling it out in Egypt. We are battling it out in Syria-Palestine region. Yeah, that's it. That's about where we're at the moment. So let's go. Speed this up a bit more. Okay, they're attacking us there. And we won. Okay, we've got these guys cut off. Mobile unit combined arms has advanced. Good. Okay. When can we start doing this? Okay. And one more battle. Or apparently so, so we're going to wait to move resources over to that. Now, is that enough battles now? Yes. There we go. Okay, we can produce a little bit more. I think we need a few more infantry divisions. Just sort of your regular sort of infantry divisions. Some artillery, anti-tank, recon. Yes, engineers. Yes, horse transport and division headquarters. Aren't we getting supplies in through there? Yes, we are. Okay. How big is this port? Oh, just a level 1. That's maybe part of the reason why. Okay, desert unit training has advanced. Yeah, we'll let that go. We got a lot of deserts still to fight in. Yeah, this is turned around here. And what tech was that? Assault weapons. That's the engineering type assault weapons. Okay, that looks like it's under control. Here, that's looking pretty good. Okay. Decryption and encryption may be our next thing. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. Let's go with encryption first. Yeah, just I'm not sure whether I want to put the auxiliary vessel out here or maybe more necessary in the Mediterranean. I think because that'll be my only ability to invade. Okay, good. We saved all that there. here. Okay, standard infantry branch upgrade. Good. Grayed out, but allows mechanized infantry. Yeah, we'll start that. And artillery branch. Artillery brigades have advanced. And what's the one? Artillery upgrade mix support. Oh, that's right. Still not terribly used to all of this. Put this one here. That happens fast. Research, that is. What if we attack them? Oh, cancel. Oh, there now. I cut them off. We give them money for fuel. No, thank you. I don't want to ship it all the way around it. We still have to go all the way around Africa with that. I'm moving back into place there to hold that link open. Are we getting more supplies through here? Yes, okay, good. That should be well enough with our supply needs. Come in there. Okay, bridging equipment and armored engineers infantry. Yeah, down here, but we're going to come up here and do the old decryption. Oh, okay, well these guys can move now. Well, let's be bold. Swing out and around. So we're going to cancel that back. Well, I think we should bomb there. Come on. Okay, you guys just rest up then. Well, they say to do this in YouTube school, so gotta say, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Love having you around more often. We're going to counterattack with that. Also, whether it's one of my rant videos or one of my other videos, it helps immensely if you share it. And by that, you can see there's a share button down below the video, if you're not having it on full screen, that is. And hit the share button, and if you have a YouTube account, Instagram, or Facebook, or something else I'm not familiar with, particular social media type site to go, hey, look at this, watch this, something simple like that. Even if this guy's nutty, take a look at his stupid ideas. That works too. No, thank you. They're wanting military access, like to Vietnam or something, or down here. I'm not sure where, but I'm, of course, have no current plans of sending troops out to Indochina. or even trying to hold sub-Saharan Africa at the moment. Who knows in the long run? Oh, we have a decision. Like here, we just lost another province down there. Big deal. Sure, for the moment, we're getting resources in from some of these places, if they have any resources, that is. Like here, we're getting... Well, I guess we're not getting. Maybe we don't have the ships for it or something. For some of this stuff. Maybe it's coming overland via some way, I don't know. But, creation of Croatia title. Okay, well, guess it worked out in the last series to try to do that. Okay, well, let's back up there with you. Okay, they're hitting an HQ. Let's see, these guys, we're gonna just plow down the coast. Hopefully keep some momentum up. We'll use the armor. I guess we can probably take on a light infantry unit. Come like that. Trying to mess with them so that we can win these battles because they move troops somewhere else. Rolling artillery barrages. Air defense, yeah, that's worth it. These are sort of showing us how the British still are a bit better than us in some of these areas. Better than the Italians. We can sort of take on the Greeks and the Yugoslavs reasonably well, on good footing. You know, one division versus another division type things. But we need overwhelming numbers just to hold off a British attack that they're being reasonably successful with still. Here. They gave a lot of armor to these guys. Wow. Good armor too. Core HQs, okay. Alright, we're gonna let that go. Checking on the year date. Germany has annexed Norway. Well, good for you. Now, hopefully, you can occupy it well enough. I don't know what Yodel's doing up there. Yodeling, maybe? I know that's Swiss, but whatever. Mountains. It was almost funny. You have to agree it was almost funny. I'm not saying you gotta agree that it's funny, because it wasn't, but isn't that almost funny kind of thing? Okay, well, we're going to fall back with our sheep then. We're not doing well enough there. I sent up these guys. I'm going to try to get them to Syria. You need to start falling back to there. Your pump doctrine. Yeah, let's do that. Oh, well, here. They held, the HQ's held, so let's now attack down this way. Let's move here. You attack there. Algerian coast. Okay, now we have a reasonably decent sized stack here. I can't get to there. We can't get across the Suez, I guess. We've got ships in the way. A sea zone or something, maybe. That can hold that up. You come over there. These guys, I don't know. What is this like? Don't know. What is this like? Okay. Light cruiser, I think, and we're the subs. Switzerland, give them money for fuel. No, thank you. We got plenty of fuel, and we're not buying it from there. Anyways, unless we were super desperate or something, and we're not quite there yet. Okay, well, can't let that go on too long if it keeps being that bad. Yes, we're already moving to recapture that province. And yes, they're going back up to there. Iraq. No. Okay, recon unit, that's good. Communication, that means I guess they get to talk to their unit they're reconning for. Better like, hey. It's no longer just, hey, there's enemy out here. It's like, hey, there's enemy on the left flank and it's 2 tanks. They communicate better or something. I don't know. Okay, well, now they're moving. They're not yet. There you guys go. Give them money for metal. Okay, we do need the metal. Let's see, can we get it from Germany instead? I'd rather give money to Germany. We need what, 17, 18, so no, that makes it impossible. Don't know what they did with the code that, you know, obviously you can order, but I don't think it's a black ice thing. I think it's a Ahoy 3 thing that you can no longer, you know, buy and sell more than one thing at a time. Or per trade agreement or something. Don't know. It was never a big issue for me, but it was sort of a thing. Airborne unit training. Okay. Well, if we do drop that unit, we need it good. Artillery upgrade, good. Oh, that was here. Grayed out. Alright, well, I guess we should do the anti-tank. And get that. That'll help with the British. Already driving our armor unit out. I know it's light armor, but we did have, which is sort of that pathetic little thing. You know, this it won't. Don't worry, you don't have to jump ahead. This won't be long. But Dark X, hi Dark X, if you're out there, pointed me, gave me a search term in Italian. This is one thing that, again, this won't be long, but often I search for things in English and I get some results, and it's cool. But then when somebody, or sometimes I see a term in German or Italian or something like that, and I type that in, I get a flood new, really cool search results. And it's really nice to find some good material that way, including a bunch of stuff on selling on eBay, but it's the Italian eBay site, and it included a bunch of photos from, some of the stuff I got was photos from Libya and Ethiopia era during the, you know, Italian occupation down there. So, you know, that's really good stuff that I would have never found just Googling through stuff in English. So, you know, by sort of giving me the search term. But one of the things was in searching as a poster. And it's, you know, collected a bunch more great posters, whether they get used for this, you know, the thumbnails on the series or in events someday for an Italian thing. I really sort of like the graphic art style of a lot of these things. And, you know, doesn't make me like their politics. It just means that, oh, that's a cool poster. You know, that's all. And so, you know, so I like to use them because they are striking images, and I like that. So, you know, sort of Art Deco look. And so one of them is the, you know, sort of heroic, and it's sort of like coming up to an edge of a ridge or something to sort of like go up over or something. So you're sort of a little above you kind of thing. Of the Italian CV-33s. I have to wonder, what the hell are they thinking? Because this is maybe a little sort of a CV-33 or something. It looks like. I'm not exactly sure what this model really is. Well, a Fiat Ensemble model. Ensaldo. Sorry, I'm messing that up. Fiat Ensemble Model 36, which I really don't know much about. But the CV-33 is basically that sort of whole type with just two machine guns, not a turret, just two machine guns on it. And it may be a bit smaller thing than this, but it's a little two-man tankette. And the Italian poster is making this out, and it's from sometime in the 30s. You know, I'm pretty sure before the war. You know that. Here's, you know, bold Italian armor, and I'm thinking, that thing? You stand a guy up next to it, the top of the tank comes to his waist. I mean, okay, maybe slightly taller than his waist, but it's really that sort of small, dinky little thing. And the Italian, you know, I mean, I get the idea that they're working with the best they got. You know, well, what is our Italian tanks? Oh, yeah, it's this, so we're going to do that. Yeah, but who's like going, you know, and this is something I'm pretty sure from the 30s, you know, the 30s, you know, I presume, I don't know right off the top of my head, the CV-33 comes in about in sometime in 33, you know, adopted at that time, but not necessarily. So, your armor isn't quite what it was in the 40s. I do want to admit that. But it's, a turretless, little tiny two-man tankette with machine guns that they're trying to make into some bold statement to, raise domestic confidence in how great our leaders are and how great our nation is? Is it to strike fear into the French or the Albanians, that we have these CV-33s? I just, don't get it, I guess. The graphics in this, because it's a sort of a drawing style as opposed to a photograph or anything, looked really well, and I liked it. But I just have to laugh. That? Yeah, if I was laying out prone out in the desert, a British soldier, and those things start driving towards me, and all I got is my Enfield rifle, because it's sort of sealed up, and it could probably see me out there laying prone to some degree and machine gun me, and, I'm not going to like that. But I've got a trench, and maybe a sandbag wall with a little bit of, sandbags on top of me. So I'm about as protected from the machine gun bullets as it's protected from the rifle bullets. And if it comes sort of too close to me, I can maybe throw a grenade on it or something. And if I got a boy's anti-tank rifle, we'll probably go in one side of the vehicle and out the other, because it has rather thin armor. So, yeah, and yes, if you mass 20 or 30 of them at me, probably couldn't kill them, if we just had, my platoon or company just had one boy's anti-tank rifle. They could probably drive over us pretty quickly. But still, if we were dug in, nice sort of, because, the Alamein trenches or the trenches system around Tobruk or whatever, were pretty extensive. Maybe not the quite extreme World War I style trenches, but pretty big. Kind of thing that if the CV-90 could actually, drive over, wide enough to drive over them and not just turn it into a tank. Because if they're just wide enough to turn into a tank ditch, and sort of fall into them, and sort of like the Italian, see looking out the top of his little vehicle through his hat, he's now stuck in my tank, my long trench, I go, you guys are fucked. So, so just some of these things that just sort of are like, okay, that's your idea of badass tankery. We need to make a poster of it. This sort of kind of surprises me sometimes what they're doing. Now we need to concentrate our forces here. So yeah, what are they thinking? I don't know. And maybe if I had either an Italian's perspective, it's a tank, anything, my God, it's a real tank. Or maybe just a general person in the 1930s going, hey, it's a tank. That might be big enough of a thing that it means something. Okay, recon unit combined arms. And I do try at times. I'm still with the CV-33. It's, because to me it's very much lesser than a Panzer I. Panzer I at least had a turret. And in a way very much it's even to a lesser than a FT-17, which the Fiat did make a model based on the FT-17. They're one of the greater sort of, they're in the sort of Russian/Soviet thing. It looks like it, but it's sort of made on its own terms and not a super accurate copy. Those, which are two-man tanks and are pretty small. I've stood next to a non-real but non-functional sort of damaged war thing years and years ago in a museum of a FT-17, actually in a sort of a private collection museum. Stand next to it. It's a pretty small, dinky thing, but it's actually taller, much taller than a CV-33. The only thing the CV-33 might be is a little wider because it's two men sitting next to each other, where the FT-17, and if you got to remember, that's the World War I French tank, with the turret, either the 37mm gun or the 8mm Lebel machine gun. But it's a Hotchkiss is but Lebel is the caliber type. You know, is, you know, a driver, and behind him standing up in the little turret thing is, you know, a person there. So, which of course the French were still using in large numbers in World War II. But in some ways that, especially with a 37mm gun on it, has a turret, is more impressive. You know, so World War One. Oh, what do you want to call it? Surplus technology, or not exactly. No, we can do torpedoes. That would be good. Thinking of the right term, surplus, or oops, somebody stole our blueprints. Who was further behind than us, or what exactly the correct term is I'm looking for. It isn't surpluses. We don't need it anymore. Leftover. So when you got that, and that looks more impressive than your new. No. New thing, I just have to wonder. Okay, oh, so our advance lost. There. They're pushing us back there. Now here. They may have enough. Get on board. Well, the other one didn't get on board with the right thing, did it? Let's... Okay, that's highlighted now. There we go. And can we get this HQ on it as well? Yes, good. Okay. What are we finding here? Ooh, we're gonna wait for that to go by. Lots of liners. We're still playing mostly an avoidance game here. Ground attacking. We'll stop ground attacking. Rest up, I guess. There we go. Need to make it unhealthy for I'll hold the poke down. I want to stop him from ground attacking, and we didn't need that. There we go, to reorganize yourself. Hopefully they'll spot and sink or damage these guys. Units are fighting. No, they got New Zealanders there. No wonder we're not doing well. Okay, stop. Let them counterattack. We'll be in good enough shape. Looks like they're retreating all their cavalry out. Damn. But we're gonna take them. Yeah, like I said, they're gonna counterattack. Not too much we can do about that. If I had some of that German armor, man, I could be moving. Battle doctrine. And what else? Army unit combined arms has advanced. We're gonna let that go because that just 39. What else to do with the artillery? Keep that going there. Okay, you need to fall back again. Maybe they can hold in the city. I think some of their shipping. Okay, good. They pushed that off. Like I was starting to say, we at least have these guys here, which should help with the dealing with the enemies. We can go over to this view here. I know some of you have reasonable trouble. Oh, you don't need to look there anymore. From the videos, looking at this. That's what's going on. Okay, I'm sort of sending you back because I may want to fly you somewhere. You come down that way, you come down this way. I don't mind the back and forth a bit with. I think we're going to risk that. We've got a fair amount of air operations going on and this moderately decent fleet. Let's rebase to here. I think that would be the safer naval path, I think, but I think this is safe enough to get there. We'll be able to influence this battle. I want to come down here and cut these guys off. But any of you, no, none of you are gonna cut these cavalry off from, well, hold it. Oh, cancel. Back there. Oh, well, no, hold them then. Don't leave. Mostly hoping to pin them, but they're just gonna run faster, I guess. Yeah, I know I'm attacking a fortress. Which isn't going to be a good idea, so I'll stop this. Nice to see the German air cover down here. Okay, cruiser damage control systems, great. Was there something else here? Not really. Well, no, we could do heavy anti-aircraft. Oh, we must have a bunch. Okay, we got an armored division. Great, that's what we're looking for. Get that out immediately. The torpedo boats and destroyer, nice, but yeah. Got a bunch of mountain divisions. We've got, oh, we probably shouldn't have, yeah, well, let's stop both of these things. The other one I'll let go, but these we want to stop. Because we have still, I'm thinking, I'm sort of forgetting, but we have still a bunch of these things. So, let's remove this. Start production. Start production. Start production. Okay, yeah, without the HQ. And what if we were trying to create a couple more of the fast division, specialized light infantry? With motorized light infantry. And that's going to slow it down. Medium artillery, will that slow it down? Yeah. Well, let's do a motorized support. Make support. That'll keep it going quick. We'll do motorcycle recon. We'll do truck transport. How would that be? That's pretty fast. How much? Let's see, 19 to 20. Yeah, I think we could afford that. Let's do some tank destroyers, just give it that little bit more. And we're just, because we have the ICs, we're going to use them. Let's send a few more of these down here. No, down to here. Now I think I have the, oh, these guys, oh, they were going to go on transports, but the escorts got sunk, so we're going to send them over here. Now I had another HQ. There we are. This is going to become a REIT. Okay. Because they're getting real armor, not just light armor. Oh no, I don't need this, but I need this. Okay, so now we have... He wouldn't be the worst choice. But let's see if we can do a little better than a 0 experienced or competent commander. It's a battle commander. Oh, come on, come on. Where's another one with a tank? But one with a 1 and a tank. Of course, my prejudice for actually having a person with a face is also there. Yeah, we'll use this guy. Same, well, not a logistics, but Crown of Italy offense. Okay, we're here. Right? Yeah, we'll use him. So we have that, and well, let's head down this way. I wanted to combine it with that HQ right off. As you can see now, at least we're having a bit better. If you notice, there's 4 bogeys instead of what I think it was 2 on the other little tank light armor stuff. So that is okay. We're gonna fall back again to Tel Aviv. And here we put your infantry and yes, we know you're you're taking in here. Okay, so that's okay. I think. Yeah, we know you're coming for that squad. We haven't really been. Oh, okay. I say we haven't been. Let's just put a nail in that coffin and come back down here. They are sort of the weakest link down on this flank there. Armored car design. Speaking of that, we got these guys. These armored cars are actually fairly good for armored cars of the period, and I mean not for Italy. I mean they're just fairly good armored cars. They're not, oh, I don't know, as good as maybe some of the late war Pumas out of Germany. You know, the big 8-wheel jobs. Those are pretty good, or some of the 6-wheeled, Greyhounds. Topping out a little better, but these automotively and, you know, sort of war fighting ability are actually fairly decent. You know, but in sort of, you know, mostly as good as what the British were using. Probably as good or better than anything the Soviets were using. I have a low respect for the Soviet armored cars of this period. You know, compared to some of the better German stuff and whatnot. But so, you know, compared to where the tanks are sort of crap. You know, the Italian 1940 tanks are like sort of great tanks for 1933, but they're not, you know, really great tanks for. And I'm not just talking about the CV-33s. I'm talking about, you know, these other things that, you know, this model of tank here, the M13 or /40, which is sort of the 1940 model of the M13 or whatever. This is now maybe is getting as good as the Czech 35Ts. You know, I know they have a different sort of number, but in the Czech service. And when I say this is, I don't know that this gun, and I don't know exactly what gun this is, but I know some of the Italian anti-tank guns were fairly low-pressured guns. You know, so they might have like a 37 millimeter diameter, but the speed in which, you know, the round comes out of the barrel is a lot less pressure, a lot less fast than like the Pack 36 / Pack 37 sort of, but they're the 36 millimeter anti-tank rounds that the Germans were using as sort of standard are coming out a lot faster rounds. So there's you know more cartridge or powder behind the rounds and whatnot. So, and I don't know specifically on this model here exactly what it is, but I think if you looked it up, it's not as good as the Czech 37 millimeter guns from 1935. And, you know, of course, just as the Germans take over in 38, or, yeah, sort of adopted in 38, but they're just getting in production when they finally take over in 39, you know, at the beginning of 39, for the 39Ts, or no, the 38Ts, yeah, the 38Ts, you know, the Czech service. So, you know, the guns on the Czech tanks are better. Yeah, the Czechs are sort of, you know, a 2-man turret only, and so, you know, they're not, and they're also riveted armor. But they drive a lot better. I know those Czech tanks, especially the 38, drives a lot better. So, you know, so if you're comparing a 1940, which is, I know, only a year or two later, but, you know, Czech tank is still going to be beating the sort of what the best the Italians can do, sort of look at the size of country and industry and things like that. And compare that to the, you know, what the Germans are doing and, you know, what the British are doing. They're just nowhere near the tank technology, and we can look at, you know, to some degree, automotively, just how good some of these vehicles are, and they're mostly not that great. Now, they're not always like, I just don't know, with particular Fiat models. I'm not in any way saying they're like the Breda 30, which I forgot what the name was while I was making the episode, though. I'm sure you noted that I... No, that'll be good. Looked it up and titled it for the episode, talking about the Italian machine gun and how bad it was. So they're, you got a couple of factors. One, how well the machine itself works, automotively, how well it drives, does it break down a lot, and that kind of thing. And also, how well does it, how well does a human operate in it? Is it comfortable to sit in? Are you well, ergonomically, can you can you quickly get the ammo where the ammo is placed and put it in the gun, or can you see out of it? You got all those kind of things that are sort of in and of the vehicle itself. Okay, so that's just a pure thing, and then you have the vehicle is how well it does versus other things. So, I guess what I'm saying is so if you get around in a FT-17 and drive around in a machine gun tanks, just say driving out in the desert, machine gunning bushes. Okay, how comfortable and how easy is it to drive that versus something else like a Panzer I or something? How well does the mechanics and that kind of thing work? That's part of the issue, but then also part of the issue is what is it shooting at and what is shooting it at it, that kind of thing. Just mentioning that is looking up some of the stuff for event images or for the thumbnails for this stuff. Saw a picture of a U.S. soldier sort of standing in a CV-33 without any machine guns that they found in Iraq that looked like it was perfectly functional. So I presume that, it wasn't like Saddam, who was planning on using it for war fighting anytime soon, but as some sort of legacy trophy type thing from World War II, a CV-33. Somehow it ended up in Iraq, and I think the U.S. brought it back as a war trophy. Though, saying that, I did also, similar time, see a photo of two Iranian tanks. That one was a Sherman and one was, another, I forget exactly, not a Bulldog, but some other, maybe it was a Bulldog, I don't know, some other American armor from World War II that the Iranians were actively using in the 1980s during the Iran-Iraq war, because it was a long sort of attritional war, and so the Iraqis were using, surplus, in this case, equipment from World War II that they were still using. Now, of course, the Iranians and the Iraqis had bought some really sort of fairly high-endish armor before, and some during the war, especially the Iranians did, is when they were allied with the U.S., bought a lot of sort of modern stuff, but they had used up so much of it. And it gets back to the usefulness that I vehemently believe weapons are useful. They're maybe outdated, but they're still useful. And so you go this World War II Sherman, and so you can pick it just sort of, not even a high a high velocity, later model of Sherman to punch better tanks. You go, well, that's in the 1980s. Why is that still useful? Well, it depends on how you're using it and who you're fighting against. If you got a bunch of, fairly early model, at that time, M1 Abrams, still with the, 105 millimeter gun and whatnot, well, they're just going to munch those vehicles. They'll just drive around and maybe, depending if somehow they sort of can ambush them, they can maybe hit an Abrams tank, but they're not going to, and maybe, if the hatch is open and the guy is standing up there and the round sort of hit and splatters a bunch of, shrapnel all around, it'll kill somebody who, has their head out of the vehicle, maybe, just maybe, if all those things sort of maybe work right, but it isn't going to hurt the vehicle, because you should just basically at almost any angle, other than some improbable thing, that may hit the driver, the tank compartment from the top, like if you dangling the tank down from the top of, from a helicopter or something and shooting straight down, you might be able to find a place on an M1 Abrams that you could actually hit it and do some damage. But basically, it's useless against the Abrams. But if you're fighting because this war degenerated into a sort of a World War I trench warfare in very significant elements of it, in which they were doing human wave attacks. Particularly the Iranians were sending a lot of children in waves of attack with AKs, and by children I mean 13, 14-year-old boys, in Islamic fervor against the the secular Iraqis, or Arab or Persians against Arabs, or however they're ginning up their propaganda to fight this war. And admittedly, Saddam Hussein did start that because it was after the fall of the Shah, and he thought he could grab off some territory. Not that he was going to, I don't think he ever thought he was going to get all of Iran, but grab off some nice key oil and other sort of bits and pieces. That's what he wanted to do. And so, if you're fighting in that sort of static warfare, and even if Iraq has some decent, T-55s or T-64s or whatever, T-72, tank brigades that are moving around, if you got part of the static front, you can sort of use it as a semi-mobile pillbox. You move it up behind the berm and sort of, just get the turret a little bit over the berm, and you're shooting your 75mm gun, which is still very effective at blowing up, enemy pillbox positions, or enemy, where they sort of, wood and sandbags and whatever for machine gun type positions, blowing those up. It's still absolutely effective. And I would even get in one of those and do that, if that's the kind of front that I was facing, and I would, as a commander, most assuredly use those kind of tanks. But as soon as I saw, even a brigade of T-72s starting to come around the hill, I'd instruct everybody to get out and run away from the tanks and let them just, blow them up. If you can't, outrun them or something, just, better to save the tank crews to do something else someday than just have them die in place. I'm would be a smart enough commander to know that, because you can always try to, take out T-72s or something with RPGs in the right type of terrain. So you run away until you find that terrain, which could just be your trench system, and they get, sort of stuck into it, and you can shoot at them into right angles. But, so you abandon the tanks, and then, if there's any remaining once the battle's over, you go back and you get in and use them. So weapons like this, out-of-date stuff, though the CV-33 in Iraq, I guess you could sort of use it that kind of way in the war, but it's getting near to that useless stage. But not quite. But so, yeah, just... Okay, a little bit more short rant. I remember back in the 2000s, in the aughts, that used to be what they referred to a lot of, and you find it still in 30-06. And there was 30-03. Those aughts, and the reason they call it 30-06 and 30-03, if you don't know, whether you're foreign or American, it's because they're the 30 caliber rifle of 03. That's back in the early 20th century is how they referred to 1903, or the 30 caliber round of 1906. And basically, if I remember the difference between the cartridges, you're going from a rounded nose 30-03, so they had a sort of a rounded nose cartridge, to a sort of Spitzer type pointy bullet in 30-06, in 06. So then the caliber 30 of 06. So if I say 06 now, unless I'm specifying, so 2000-06 would be sort of the way to say it, and sometimes people use that, but that's... Back then, I remember I think it was the Dutch were selling off their Panzerhaubützen 2000s, those really nice, definitely contending for the top best self-propelled 155mm or any self-propelled big caliber howitzer in service. Talk about the Swedish, but it's just a truck that's, you drive it around, and it's not armored and it's not tracked. Good for Sweden. It's sort of like the S-tank, that was, that sort of super Hetzer or something, kind of thing, with its plow, and it was designed to be in the forests and embed itself either in bunches of snow or a bunch of earth, and sort of, attack from ambush as the Soviets invaded somehow, whether over here or seaborne invasions of Sweden, sort of really good for Sweden, but would be terrible in other wars. Um, so sort of a mobile 105 millimeter system that doesn't cost too much, and for the defensive kind of purposes in Sweden, probably work pretty good. And can work okay. I would still sort of think, even though it's much more manpower intensive, the South African G6, that's another wheeled 155 millimeter would be better, but it's not nearly as self-loading. I mean, the Swedish is entirely self-loading once you get the magazines loading, and the Panzerhaubützen, I know I'm butchering the word. It's armored howitzer or whatever. Means in English the 2000 is semi-automated in its use, so it has very rapid fire. South African, at least in the earlier versions that I'm sort of familiar with, didn't have any automation, so you had to put the round in, and you had to put the charge in and do all that manually, and then later on they did add in, once it sort of becomes a thing, because the U.S. has to put it up there, GPS type computerized aiming solutions that were added to it. But I think that's better, because even though it's wheeled, it's armored, and so where the Swedish isn't. Now, the armor on the South African isn't like, and sometimes they call, the news media call these things tanks or whatever. It isn't armored for that. It's armored for like a 30-06 rifle, or, minor shell fragments and whatever being rained down on it from airbursts of counter-battery artillery fire. Now, they've sold a bunch of those, well, some to Iraq, bunch, but to some of the other Gulf states who, at least early on, they weren't so concerned about the apartheid deal, but even in a post-apartheid South Africa has been selling them to some nations. So in some ways it may be not as good as the Swedish. Other ways I think it's better, for nations. Self-propelled howitzers. But get back to it, it was, these were good shape howitzers that I remember reading in one of the defense magazines that were up for sale, to other nations that wanted it, and they were trying to sell these. So I'm thinking, my God, you're selling, a, I don't know, 10-year-old artillery piece? Because, hey, you're sort of demobilizing your troops, and you're no longer, and I get it, that they're no longer, like, thinking there's going to be a wave of Soviet artillery coming across, or Soviet divisions coming across the West German border and maybe into the Netherlands, and you got to do your part to fight that, and I get that. And I also get defense cutbacks of going, hey, we don't need all of these artillerymen being paid and maintained, and we don't, and by maintained I mean housed and fed, and we don't need to, maintain the guns and the tracked vehicles. They're expensive running them around. So, yeah, I get the idea of cutbacks, and I get the idea of putting them into storage. And then I also get the idea of maybe our 1960s artillery. Yeah, that maybe we can sell it to some other, I don't know, African or Asian nation or something and get some bucks for it, and then reinvest it into whether it's newer artillery pieces or just more artillery, rounds, or something, it's like, again, none of these weapons are useless, but we're Netherlands, we're a first world country, we really don't need really out-of-date equipment, and we're just not gonna really need that, so we can sell that stuff, and then, while it still has value, and then make money or use the money to buy other stuff that we need. I get that, but selling the really good howitzers, why? Now, of course, I know I've been reading some articles that Sweden is like, even the social, because it currently has a socialist government, I know, the sort of the Swedish defense minister is, ooh, we're getting closer and closer and closer to our good buddies, the United States of America, and we're doing joint training exercises with the United States of America in Sweden or in the Baltic, and we're now rearming and re-equipping. The peace dividend is sort of like over, and we're buying and building weapons and weapons and weapons and building weapons and weapons because Putin. And so they've woken up, and I think a lot of the Germany is woken up and whatnot. So you know, do you want another little quick story? Do you all know that, you know, HK is a really good arms company? I own some HK products. Won't go into what? At least 2 or 3 that I can think of that are HK products that I own. Rather nice stuff. But, you know, Germany in the post-war world wanted to upgrade it from its G3s, the 308 rifle, and wanted to upgrade to a new weapon. So I forget the exact model. You know, they bought huge bunch and equipped basically all their, you know, basic troops. And then some of the Baltic states also, or one of the Baltic states also bought these really nice new HK weapons that, you know, assault rifle type weapons. Really look spiffy. They look really spiffy. And, you know, got them all out there and equipped and using them and whatever. And Germans started to notice something about them. You can't hit shit with them after about 20 rounds. I mean that. I mean, you can put up a man-sized target at, I don't know, 50 yards, 100 yards, and get 100% on sight and pull that trigger, and it won't hit the target. And sort of HK's response was, well, that wasn't in the requirements that you specified for when you wanted to have these weapons, that you hit the target with them. I think they sort of knew. And so they're just SOL. They're literally, I don't know if they picked a new weapon, but it's, I don't know, some basically almost uncorrectable element in the gun. Once it sort of heats up, you know, so if it's nice cold winter, the first 10 shots, they're great. After that, not so much anymore. So you can't hit anything with them. And so a couple of the Baltic states I know bought Israeli Galils, which are really nice weapons. Sort of in the way the best AKs ever made, because it sort of took the basic AK principles and made it Westernfied, you know, precision making and machined receivers and high quality. And they bought the nations, the Baltic states that bought the Galils are doing just fine. I forget whether it's like, I think Lithuania or Latvia, one of these two bought the German model and the HK, and they just really suck. But Europe is realizing that history isn't over. It's still continuing. And I know a few people have sort of, and I know this is going on a little bit longer than I intended. Oh, well, we know history wasn't over, and I forget exactly the context. Well, there's, a book called The End of History, sort of like question mark or something. And sort of, you know, post collapse of the Soviet Union, and history sort of over, and the idea, yeah, and it's not that there wasn't going to be history, but the idea that everything sort of settled. You know, Germany wasn't going to fight to change its borders, kind of thing. Not that there wasn't going to be fighting somewhere in the world, and, you know, not that nothing was going to happen, but really didn't have to worry about too much, because Boris Yeltsin was in charge of Russia, or the Soviet Union for a while, as it changed over. And we're all just going to be happy, friendly Europeans now. We're not going to kill each other. And, oh, well, yeah, there was, and I think it was actually written before the Balkans crisis blew up, but they're learning that history ain't over. Germany may get invaded by Russia again. Or Germany may invade somewhere again. And one thing I wonder is, and I don't know if any of you know, because I know I got viewers from Poland, quite a few. What's going to happen here? You know, and, well, I don't know that it's so much Memel, but this sort of little bit of East Prussia that went to the Russian Federation, or the Russian, or the what's it called, the Union of Soviet, the Russian Socialist Republic or whatever, as part of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics or whatever, you know, the Russian bit here. And so when you get Lithuania, and you get Poland down here, and then you get this little sliver of sort of a Russian military zone. What the hell's going to happen with that? Now, I know Putin isn't going to give it up, but what the hell is going to happen with that in the long term? Who's living there? Are they all Russians? Are they all just imported Russians? Because obviously, when it was East Prussia forever, there weren't really any, have any significant number of ethnic Russians there. Is it going to, and of course Putin wants to get the Baltic states back. He wants that so badly. And if he's allowed to get away with the stuff and getting at least, I don't know if obviously he wants all of Ukraine, but I think he'll realistically settle for the sort of, I don't know, the Dnieper, east of the Dnieper, sort of eastern Ukraine, to sort of give a good solid land bridge down to Crimea. I think that's where right now is his sort of goal. I know he's sort of Mariupol, sort of holding, the line is sort of being held here, right along here, and I don't know who controls Mariupol at this moment, but if he's allowed to get away with all of this, his next targets are the Baltic states. That's why I don't know if there's any U.S. troops there right now, but there's been, within the last year, U.S. troops deployed here as a deterrent / training force / whatever. But they're learning that history and border wars and appearing and disappearing of countries, not just into the maw of the EU, but these other things may not be happening. So I just wonder who's going to get this back. Is it going to go back to Germany? Going to go to Poland? Is it going to go to Lithuania? I'm just sort of thinking that what's going to happen. This is just, again, I know I'm going off on this, sorry. Probably the end of the episode. So I'm going to end the episode after I'm done chatting about this. So if you want to just get gameplay, go away and come back next time. I mean that in the nicest way. Because look, I know some of you don't like all my rants, and some of you love them and whatever. So it's a balancing, and it's really very much a balancing act that I have to play here. I'm sort of positing the idea that there's going to be a conflict at some point. Again, it's not, I don't think it's going to blossom out into nuclear weapons, because I don't think it's going to be over the existence or non-existence of the Russian state, the Russian nation. So I don't think that they're going to go to the point that they think they need to launch nuclear missiles. If I were president at the time that, because it was during Obama's term, so of course it happened then. But if I were president at the time that the Soviets reoccupied the Crimea, what I would have done, because the U.S. still recognizes this as part of Ukraine, I would have asked Ukraine if I could come in and do a joint training exercise in the Ukraine, And, okay, can I send like a brigade of tanks over? Okay. And I would have done a live fire training exercise right down into here. And if anybody started shooting at me, zinging bullets at me, I would have opened fire on them. Oh no, we're not fighting Russians. What are these Russians doing inside of the Ukraine? We're not invading Russia. We're just doing a training exercise inside Ukrainian territory. And I would have just come in here and basically come in well prepared, well equipped. Another thing the U.S. has abandoned completely, and I don't know if they're re-equipping now, but they scrapped all of their anti-aircraft units. The U.S. didn't sell them off to somebody else. They just sort of mothballed the equipment. Because, hey, we were controlling all the airspaces over Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever we're deploying. So when we deploy an armored brigade or an infantry brigade or whatever, we don't need to send in or have even trained up troops. That's part of it. Trained up troops, not just like, oh, how do you turn on this box that, that's the radar box. That's part of it. But also, training up is how do you move the anti-aircraft elements as you move the rest of the infantry or armored brigade. Do you leapfrog? Does everybody drive at once? What do how do you integrate it into your movements and firing? I mean, that's part, the training. So the guys who do, have to drive that around have to know how to drive and know what to do. So they're, sort of only vaguely told, hey, next movement to point X, and then point X shows up on the map. Oh, okay, I sort of know how to do it, and then the other, so they move it, because the other one's over at point Y covering them or what, sort of that they sort of know what they're doing, but also the commander of the brigade, who isn't an air defense specialist, he's just the brigade commander, sort of knows what's happening with his air defense. And you go, well, yeah, and we didn't need it, and we sort of didn't need it there for a while, but I don't know if they're training them back up, but terrorists, they can fly drones. And drones can be simple model type airplanes, that are 3-4 feet wide kind of thing. It can be made in workshops in Iran and secreted and given, without made in Iran stamps on it, give it to terrorists in places like Iraq or wherever. And they can go up there and you can mount a little machine gun on them or a little pistol or put a little, a couple of hand grenades that'll blow up when they're dropped, or when they're, as it's doing a suicide attack, ramming attack, and there's nobody in it, but, little drone into a vehicle. And guys with 50 caliber machine guns, especially experienced in, World War II shows, they have a hard time shooting those things down. It's not that you can't. If you're prepared, not that you can't, but you have a hard time doing it. Where if you had, Stinger missiles, they could spot them and shoot down, or it may just be a camera drone that's up there flying and waiting to watch for the truck to drive over the point X and blow up the IED, or something like that. You might want to be able to shoot down a drone. Just a simple drone. And yeah, a Stinger missiles may be a lot more expensive than the drone, but still, you're sort of protecting the troops, which are more expensive than the Stinger missile. Paying rehab and all that stuff for wounded troops, and, that gets expensive. So, Stinger missiles are sort of cheaper than that. So, the U.S., by the time I was thinking of doing this, didn't have any active, to my knowledge, good, no, they had Patriot missiles for big area defense, but they didn't have local, close-in self-defense stuff. But to get back on it, I would have just moved my moved the tank brigade in, ready to go, instructed that, hey, if somebody's shooting at you, you shoot back at them. But just sort of dared the Russians to shoot back at the Americans. I really would have done that, because that is not offensive action against any UN recognized territory. Recognized by because the UN, because the US, I'm sure, if Russia wants to, recognize that this is the current borders of Russia, the US and Britain and a few other nations on the Security Council will veto it. And I'm sure it's not going through the General Assembly, because even though the General Assembly of the UN hates the US, they don't want the precedent set that some bigger neighbor can come and slice off a chunk of one of their nations. So they're not going to vote to recognize, not unless the Ukraine signs a treaty that, is a peace treaty, and signs a treaty that recognizes that the, Crimea is part of Russia or something like that. Then they would recognize it. But short of that, it's not going to happen. So I would have, within the first 6 months, just done a live fire exercise right down into, not driving against anywhere in recognized Russian territory, but just come down into the Crimea and shoot back if they shoot at you, and just in your wake of coming in there, have Ukrainian troops coming in behind you, and while they're staring down the barrel of M1 Abrams, they come in and disarm and detain and eject the Russian troops. I think that would have been probably a peaceful outcome. Would have stopped the Russians pushing into the rest of Ukraine. And if it wasn't peaceful, I really don't think it would have devolved into a general war with Russia. But because they didn't do that. Now, of course, we have Trump, which isn't Obama, which I know that some of you out there don't like Trump. Some of you like him, whether you're in the U.S. or not, and you hate all of his tweets. My crowd was 10 times bigger than Obama's, and we look at a picture and it looks like it's 1/4 the size. I agree with you. He says a lot of nonsense on Twitter, and I'm not a fan of everything that he does. And oh, he's accused of raping women. Yeah, but he was a Democrat then, and it's okay for Democrats to rape women. Okay, you just have to understand that in America, it's okay for Democrats to rape women. Oh, well, the new Me Too movement. Oh, well, what did Kirk Douglas at the Golden Globes ceremony last night as we're recording this get a Lifetime Achievement Award, and he was supposedly been for many, many years, and I really didn't know this until just recently, supposedly when she was 17, raped Natalie Wood or whatever. 17 is under the age of consent, so that would just be statutory rape. If it was semi-consensual, and I don't know that it was violent rape as opposed to drug or alcohol sort of induced kind of stuff. But so since he's a Democrat and they're all Democrats, and oh yeah, they're still making movies with Woody Allen, who of course had an affair or whatever with his adopted daughter. Yeah, and I think that happened before she was 18 or whatever, but yeah, it's okay if you're a Democrat and you're sort of rapey like that, And so all of Trump's bad women behavior was when he was a Democrat, so it's okay. So don't try to throw Trump at me for his bad behavior towards women, because he was a Democrat when he did it, so it's okay. If he does it while he's a Republican, then we got to get on him for it. But if he does it as a Democrat, he's okay. So, you cannot like Trump. I'm not a big fan of Trump either. I like some of the stuff that he's doing. Yes, that may get a couple of you to leave the channel. But, so, but whether you like him or not, Putin knows he can't just drive tanks to, what's the capital here? No, why am I blanking on this? I know it. Of Ukraine. Kiev. No, Kiev, no. What is the capital? God, I'm blanking on all this. I don't know, to the capital of Ukraine. And just sort of declare it Russian territory again or something. Where he might have been able to do that under Obama. They realize that, but it comes down to is, who's the next president? Is it going to be Oprah Winfrey? I'll tell you what, if Oprah Winfrey's the president, and she has a reasonable chance, I'm not saying she'll win, but if she runs as a Democrat, she'll win the Democratic Party's nomination. But I'm not saying she'll win. Oh, of course, she was a good friend of Harvey Weinstein, but, he's just another Democrat, so it's all right for him to rape people. But if Oprah Winfrey's the next president, you will see another Russian invasion within the first 6 months. Don't know where. Baltic states likely. And it may not be Russian tanks. It may just be the green men. Men without, men in just green fatigues without claiming to be Russians. Claiming to be local patriots helping the Russian minority population. But that could happen. And now, of course, I don't know what Oprah Winfrey would do as a president, whether she would, and sometimes this is where you get wars in that, oh shit, she's going to really do something and start shooting back because she won't put up with it. Because at least, and I don't watch her show and I don't, know much about her, but she seems like a sensible person. I don't know how good she is on international politics, and she may sort of play the sort of early Obama game. Well, leave the Republican in charge of the Defense Department, but we're going to tie his hands. What they did to Robert Gates. Or sort of like what Trump did with, well, we'll get everybody's sort of sensible Rex Tillerson in as a, Secretary of State so that people will be calmed down. So, she might get, oh, Mad Dog Mattis, you stay on. We're going to be all sort of liberally and social policy inside the U.S. But hey, yeah, go zap terrorists. You go fight smart wars. I'll just sort of leave you to it. Just please don't start any new ones. And so she might be good on defense. I don't know, but whether she's good or bad, somebody like Putin, or maybe China, or somebody is going to move against somebody, or it's going to be Turkey going into Syria or going into Kurdistan or something. It'll be something that will happen, and maybe the U.S. will, and everyone will watch to see what happens. But I'm sort of positing the idea that someday there is going to be an East-West conflict between whatever current Russia is, and whether it's NATO directly or some of these other, Ukraine or some other nation here. And once the fighting sort of happens in some part of it, what's going to happen with the sort of little bit of East Prussia here? That this Russia, I keep wanting to say the Soviets because that's who took it, still occupies. What's going to happen? And who gets it? Of course, the most legitimate claim is Germany. Yeah, Germany lost the rest of East Prussia because Germany didn't play nice with Poland and invaded Poland and, I don't know, killed lots of people. Millions, actually. Not just I'm talking death camp, I'm just talking died in wars that were sort of started over Poland. So yeah, Germany, and this is, Poland can be rightfully pissed off that some of their eastern territory was lost, but they were sort of compensated by other territory. Yeah. And Germany doesn't play nice. Germany today, if you come in, if you behave sort of like Poland, modern day Poland, and be good and strong and nationalistic, but not invade other people to take their land, I'm sort of with you guys, like you go fight the Russians again to defend Poland. Hey, I'm with you on that. You go to Russia you fight Russia to go grab off, the Ukraine for yourself. I'm not with you anymore, So depends on how you go. I may be with you on your next war, because in the past you've known how to fight wars pretty well, Germany. You lose because you take on everybody at once. It's like, hey, world out there, yeah, all of you. We got you. We're gonna get you, world. Oh, you mean all of our allies leave? Yeah, well, we're gonna fight our allies too. Yeah. We're gonna fight the Italians and the Finns too. Yeah. So you sort of have that attitude. You're gonna lose. You decide to fight everybody at once, you're gonna lose. But if okay, I know this is sort of one of my rants, but so I still just wonder, and yeah, it's a tragedy for if they're all Russians sitting here. What happens to them? Now, of course, I've lived in a privileged country. Now, I don't believe in white privilege. I'm not talking about that. There's definitely inheritance privilege. If your parents are rich and they went to the right schools and have the right kind of jobs, sort of look at Hollywood, some of the children of big stars. Christopher Plummer's daughter, or I forget what her name is. You ever seen her? She has a Hollywood career. Oh God. I never really talked to her, but I sort of vaguely kind of worked with her I was on the set working on the same movie that she was in one time as a star. But have you, she's a nice enough person. I think I vaguely said hi to her or something once, but some of the other stars, not necessarily you would really recognize. Well, one of them you would recognize the name. I may have almost given too much away there, but some I sat down and had lunch with, and whatnot, and chatted for some time. But years ago, worked on a movie. As part of the crew, not in it, kind of thing. But but Christopher Plummer's daughter is. You just look at her. She's there because she's Christopher Plummer's daughter. And again, she seems like a nice person, but that's not talent for on-screen acting and why she got started in it and that kind of thing. So so yeah, there's privilege of who your parents are. But it's not because you're white. Look at Jesse Jackson's son, who's a congressman. Is he a congressman because he's black? Or because he's such a good political person? No. He's a congressman because he's Jesse Jackson's son. Okay. There's that. You know, there's privilege. But I also live in a privileged nation. Other than our own civil wars, we've not been occupied by foreign powers. We've not been conquered by other people. Yeah, I know the War of 1812 and the British showed up and burned our capital down. But, that's sort of a minor thing, all things considered. Burning your capital down is significant, but it was still sort of under construction and hardly anybody lived there. I mean, literally, hardly anybody lived there at the time. It wasn't like they took down New York or Boston or someplace like important like that. I'm serious. So I don't have that sort of, I'm talking sort of theoretical and whatever. What do you do with people? Well, which we're sort of facing in America. But these dreamer kids were born and raised in America, and they don't know their country, and they don't speak, fluently the language of their. So that doesn't make them legal here. And I wouldn't be adverse to giving them some sort of status here. But when we won't close the borders to new illegal aliens, when we won't negotiate for better or more limited, quite honestly, immigration into the U.S. 10 million a year, folks. 10 million a year coming into the U.S. How many years can we put up with that? And I know more than 30% of this audience is non-U.S. This is not I hate all the rest of you people in the world. And and I'm not talking about anybody's skin color. But how many a year? 10 million, under like some of the Obama years? 10 million a year? Legal immigration? More than we need, okay, in any 1 year. I'm not saying they're bad people or we don't want immigrants. That's an entirely different thing. That's what the Democrats want to make out my opinion. Yeah, this is becoming too much of a rant, I guess. I don't know. So, and if the Democrats aren't willing to give seriously and put people like me concerns at rest by building a real border wall that the next president can't just turn off, if you will, you know what I mean. It'd be shock, you're actually going to tear the damn thing down. Well, that'll put a real shock into the people of America, not just because they'll often say, oh, well, we're still, because if you don't have a wall there, they'll just cut the funding and not arrest too many people coming over or whatever. Really put in real things and change the laws. If they're not willing to talk about that, then I'm saying, yep. All you dreamers out there, and I very well may know some of the dreamers personally. I don't ask people where I live what's your status. And I know that definitely some of my status of people that were born here, that are Hispanic, but their parents weren't. And yeah, so I mean, so it affects people that I know. But yeah, but here, yeah, okay, if you're Russian and you're born here, but what do? It's like, I understand that the Czechs after World War II kicked every last single damn, as they would see it, Sudeten German out of Czechoslovakia. All the sort of border region. All of them got kicked out at the end of World War II. If you're not worried, if you didn't know about that, all of them got kicked out of Czechoslovakia. Sent, whether it was to East Germany or whatever. I don't know if any of them ended up in Austria. But they all got sent out. Just because, well, you didn't want to be part of Czechoslovakia, and you caused us to lose our country, so you're out. And they did vote, really, 90+% to be part of Germany. So, yeah. And since that was going to be the border, and that's the defensible border, the mountain range, yep, they had to leave. And yep. Generations of homes living in there, you lose, and you're not necessarily compensated. So what happens to them? do they want to become Polish or Lithuanian? Do they want to learn a different language and have their, by the time their grandchildren show up? Because that's sort of the idea in America, is that you show up from country X. Let's do something non-controversial like Norway. You show up from Norway. In the modern day world, they probably speak some English. In the 18th century, you didn't speak any English necessarily. You show up there. By the time your grandchildren are born, they're Americans now, who vaguely know that they're from Norway and know that their last name is Norwegian, and they might have a liking for some food that isn't normal in America, because it's some Norwegian whatever. I'm trying to be non-controversial about this and this kind of thing, and that's the way it's supposed to be in America, and that's what we expect it to be. That's not the way it is now, but that's the way it was. Is that the idea is that, yeah, the first generation comes in, may not know too much about America, but by the third generation, they're Americans. They think of themselves as Americans. That was the idea, that is sort of the idea, and that is America. But in my travels, and this is not bragging, in my travels around Europe and my just general study of other places in the world, I can't go and become a Pakistani. Not that I can or can't legally somehow get citizenship in Pakistan, but I'm never going to be a Pakistani. I know I can't, because I just don't know the laws in Pakistan, but I know I cannot become a citizen of the People's Republic of China. I don't know about Taiwan, but China. I cannot become a citizen of because of some of the stuff I've recently been sort of studying and watching. I know I can, literally, there is no process for me to become a citizen of mainland China. There's just no possibility. And so I get a work permit, and so long as the companies sort of want me there, I could be there. But I can't marry a local and stay. I can marry a local, but if I marry a local, I have to leave in China, legally. Oh, you can get a permission to come back and visit your wife. Or if you're, a woman, visit your husband. Now, the visit may be for 6 months. And then you may have to leave for 10 minutes, go to Hong Kong, and then get permission to come back and visit again. De facto residency, but not a real resident. Basically, if you marry a Chinese person, you and the Chinese person are supposed to leave China. Like I say, de facto, that it can sort of work out. So don't post me, oh, I know somebody. Yeah, I do know a couple of guys who make video. I don't know them, but I know of a couple of guys who make video channels in this part of China, who are, one's a South African and one's an American, and they're both married to Chinese women, but they've lost their Chinese jobs and basically live off their YouTube money-making thing, and they get this visa that allows them to come in and visit their wives, and it can be for 6 months or something, and whatever. So it's not, they're sort of in fact living there, and the Chinese authorities know it. They're not doing it illegally, but they're not there on any sort of permanent residency status. In America, you marry, if you're in America, if you're a foreigner living in America and you marry an American, you get to stay. If you're a foreigner living outside of the U.S., you marry American. It can be up to a 10-year process. A friend of mine years ago married a Filipino woman who was living in the Philippines, and he met her and visited and whatever. And it was taking years, and he moved out of the state, and I lost touch with him at that point before she actually moved to the U.S. I presume it worked out. I don't know what that, but it had been going through several years that he was flying back and staying with her for a few weeks at a time, and then flying back to the U.S. and trying to get it all worked out. But now that was his third marriage. So yeah. But basically, and sort of the idea is in the U.S. is what they sort of do is they don't want to just make it as you marry somebody Because trust me, there was plenty of people in the U.S. that just for a piece of paper, they'll marry somebody that gets you in. The U.S. want to make sure that yes, you're actually going to be husband and wife, and you're going to live together and whatever else, and then they don't really care. But if they just think it's like a paper marriage, and trust me, there would be millions of paper marriages that people would get married for 6 months or a year or whatever, 2 years, be officially married to somebody, maybe not live in the same house or in the same state or whatever, and then get a divorce because people outside the U.S. would pay to have that happen enough to make, to happen. There'd be millions of people, and people would do it, with like once a year, get married for a year, and then marry somebody else. I never live with them really, if that was allowed. So, it's not it's just, try to prevent the scams from happening, if you will. Because what I'm saying is I'm not talking illegal status here, in Pakistan. But Pakistan, the country, the society, is never going to accept me as a Pakistani. I'll never be able to become one of them. And I probably really can't become a Frenchman either. I could maybe become the American living in France and be one of those sort of cool Americans living in France or something, but I'll never become a Frenchman. And I accept that. It's a cultural whatever, and I'm not talking a racial type thing. It's just a cultural and social kind of thing. But would people in this modern day world, and yeah, grandma, grandpa, whoever that speaks Russian, they aren't going to learn Lithuanian or Polish or whatever, I know that. But would their descendants accept and become part of that? And I know there's a few viewers from the Baltic states, and I'd love to hear, what are the Russians doing that live here? I know there's under Stalin and post-Stalin, the Soviets moved in Russians into the Baltic states. What are they doing? Are they learning Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian? Are they melding into your modern independent society, or are they just sort of biding their time, waiting for the Russians to come back and take over again? And I'm sure there's individuals of either case, either an Estonian person marrying a Russian born in in what is today Estonia, marrying an ethnic Estonian and going, hey, I love my wife, husband, whatever, and our children are going to be raised as Estonians, and so we're Estonians now. I'm sure there's that case, and I'm sure there's also the case of somebody who's a Russian patriot and has Russian flags up on their walls inside their house or something, and are just waiting for the Russians to come back. But I'm talking about generally in society. What are the people there thinking? Are they, what's going to happen? Are they melding into the society, or are they remaining a part of it? And I would really like, if there's anybody who lives there and sort of knows, just sort of a, quick paragraph about that. I would be fascinated to know what their perceptions are. Whether you're a Russian, ethnic Russian living there, or you're a ethnic Baltic state person. What are your thoughts on that? I'd love to hear. But on that note, we'll end this episode. Thanks for putting up with another one of my chats. I really didn't mean it to go this way. I just sort of get in the mood. See you next time for more Hearts of Iron.